Oh, good day, everyone. It's early. That's right, on a Friday. It's Peter Dunn, Pete the Planner. I said CEO of something. I don't even know. Hey, it's the host of the Pete the Planner Show, and there's Damian Dunn. Dame, I've shot so many videos and things this week where I'm claiming to be this person or that person that I don't even know how to label myself when I start a radio show these days.
They all blend together, much like all of your personalities.
Mea culpa time. We're sorry the volume has not been great here recently. The production value of the podcast has slipped. Dame is low. I am high. We're trying to fix it this week. Stick around. We're sorry that you have to turn it up so you can hear Dame, and then I blast your eardrums with frivolity, and that's never fun.
No.
I sounded insincere when I apologized there, didn't I?
I think that's probably because you were.
It's not actually. I am sincerely apologetic about the whole thing. I'm just frustrated by it because I just don't want to spend any time on it.
Well, people may not understand if they've never put together a production before how time-consuming it can be to chase down the one little detail that may be throwing everything off. And if you don't have time to do that, then it just becomes one more thorn in your side.
Those watching on Facebook Live and YouTube Live are wondering, why in the world is Peter in a three-piece suit, minus the jacket? Therefore, a two-piece suit, but a different variety. Going to a funeral today. So thank you for asking, everybody. Lost a dear man, Fred Parker, poor man. But so anyway, we will go say goodbye to him later today. All right, Dame, let's do the show. We've got our segments lined up. The audience isn't really building because, well, we're broadcasting at an unusual time right now. But you know what? They'll get over it, right?
I hope they come back eventually.
So here's what I've said. I don't care who's watching, and I don't care if the audio quality is bad. Is that what I've said so
Essentially.
Thank you, Danza, for the kind words. Okay. Dan, we'll start the show in 3, 2. This week on the Pete the Planner Show, we answer your money questions. Here how the show works. You email us, askpete@petetheplanner.com. That's askpete@petetheplanner.com. And Damian Dunn, no relation, Vice President of Advice at Your Moneyline and Hey Money, joins me to answer your questions. Hi, Dame.
Don't you think it'd just blow people's mind if someday we said, you know what, we've been related this whole time? It's just been a big ploy.
Didn't we threaten to do like a 23andMe, and then I backed out because I didn't want my DNA out there or something?
Yeah,
Something like that.
Mr. Conspiracy Theory.
Okay, so Oz is slacking me right now. Is she about to tell me our radio is low? No, she is not. Okay, our volume is low. Okay, Dame, here we go. Several questions this week to go through here on the show. The first one revolves around a person's retirement. They emailed me, and I'm going to give it to you now. Dear Pete, my wife, 76, and I, 78, are retired. We both have a pension, our house is paid off, and our income greatly exceeds our expenses. We have over $1.2 million invested, and we haven't touched it and don't plan on touching it. We've always been conservative investors, but we've recently gotten to a point in which we want to be done with stock market investing altogether. We just don't want to think about our money fluctuating in value. And we also don't want bonds or annuities. We just want to be done. Are we being foolish? William in Newport Beach. Dame, what do you think?
Interesting situation. This isn't quite as uncommon as it may sound to some folks. If you are a family who's got had two people employed with pensions and then maybe Social Security on top of it, and lived a relatively conservative lifestyle, it's not uncommon to retire with at least as much income as you had when you were in full working ages. So even though it seems maybe a little foreign to us, it is very possible. So in this particular instance, criminy, they were excellent savers, it sounds like, and they've got all the income they need based on what their expenses may be. As long as inflation doesn't screw things up drastically for them, I think it's very possible that they could check out of the market and just live their life.
I guess the question becomes for me, there's a big element I want to talk about in a second, but to your point, how bad does inflation have to be to mess them up? If they are currently earning via the pension and Social Security much more than they need, they're not touching the 1.2 million. How much does inflation have to crush them for them to use up all of their income on their expenses and then have to dig into the 1.2 million.
A lot. I mean, it's going to be impossible for us to come up with a realistic number, but part of their income right now, the Social Security side, is going to be tied at least a little bit to inflation. So that's going to be continually bumped. The pensions, who knows? I doubt it. That's probably going to be a fixed amount of money on a monthly basis. But then the savings side, even if their expenses start to outstrip the income that they're receiving, they're not going to come anywhere close, most likely, to pulling 4% of that money out on an annual basis to meet their needs. So I think they've got tons and tons of wiggle room, and they can start to honestly look to enjoy some of that money and what they might be able to do with it.
Yeah, we are in the next segment going to talk about how Social Security is going to adjust next year based on this inflation we're dealing with right now. So to the point you just made, they are protected in that sense. The pension's a different story. Dame, what if this person wasn't 76 and 78 years old, they and their spouse, and they were 36 and 38 years old, and they had a $100,000 nest egg, and they also wanted to be done with the market? Is our guidance the same for that person?
I can't imagine it would be for that case. They'd have to show me a way that they are planning on building that nest egg with similar market type returns. I mean, there are ways to do it. You could feasibly get into, well, once upon a time, you could feasibly get into real estate and have a different sort of income stream set up. Who knows what the real estate market, especially for rentals, is going to look like going forward. It's just maybe a little bit too early to tell on that side. But there's a need that everyone is going to have to account for once they get to retirement. And I don't care if you get it through the stock market or an annuity or bonds or real estate or owning a business until you die and just take profits out of it. However you decide you're most comfortable getting there, fine. But let's really crunch the numbers and make sure that it's a reasonable approach for you.
Yeah, I think what's different about this 76-year-old and 78-year-old compared to a 36 and a 38-year-old is this 76 and 78-year-old have earned the right to be done with it. When you're 36 and 38 and dismayed with the market or whatever, or fluctuations, unfortunately, to no fault of your own or fault of your own, you haven't earned the right. That's the nature of sort of the financial privilege these people have created for themselves. So I think they can be out of the market. I will note one thing that concerns me about this situation, though, quite a bit, and it has nothing to do with the market. These people are doing well. They got plenty of money, plenty of income. Dame, what happens when someone has a long-term care need or an in-home care need? That is a problem. And so I wrote about this actual question in my USA Today column this week. And asset-based long-term care would be a beautiful thing for these people.
Yeah, I think this one fits really, really well. They could just put one lump sum of money towards that sort of protection, never have to worry about ongoing payments in the future. It's money money they aren't currently using. Who knows if they will need it in the future, but they aren't currently using it. So that would add an additional layer of protection to make sure that both of the folks in that relationship are covered in the event of something really horrible happening to them down the road.
Yeah, we did a participant event yesterday for your Moneyline clients. And Dane, we talked about being present in your own financial life during that event. And I think this is a really good example. This email of William, who emailed us, is present. He's saying, you know what? I'm taking a look at what's going on right now, and this is no longer making sense to me. And that's what I really dig about this, is that you and I have investment objectives right now. You and I have things we have to worry about. And as we get older, 30 years older, those things are going to shift, and you have to be present. Otherwise, you're just going to lead to more heartache. And so I'm a big fan of this email from William, because I don't think enough people ask themselves this question. And I also think, and even though you and I are a pro financial advisor, I think a lot of financial advisors talk people out of this sentiment, in my opinion.
I was just about to ask you if you think William has a financial advisor.
I think he does, because I think something is telling him, other than just conventional wisdom, to stay invested. What do you think?
That's my suspicion, because it would be really difficult for a lot of financial advisors to have a $1 million plus account and have the person say, you know what, I just want to be in cash. I don't want you to manage the money anymore. I just want it to sit and I'll use it when I need it. Thank you for your services. I'm moving on.
Isn't that basically $5,000 to $10,000 of lost revenue for a financial advisor, somewhere in that range, if they lose this client who then goes to a series of bank accounts that have the proper level of FDIC coverage?
Yeah, and it was probably a really low risk, low effort account as well, because they didn't really need the money. The income was being provided by the different income streams between the pension and the Social Security.
Yeah, the time, not that advisors don't spend time on everyone's particular accounts, but this William guy, just how he writes, seems pretty low maintenance, pretty laid back. So yeah, I am now I am curious that we bring that up. Like, how much is his advisor, if he has one, trying to talk him into staying? Because the guy brought up annuities, so maybe his advisor brought up annuities.
True.
Maybe that's the tell on this one. Anyway, William, yes, in our opinion, you have earned the right to be out of the market, but certainly make sure that you're using FDIC the right way with your certain bank accounts and get the right, proper coverage that way. Dame, coming up after break, we're going to hit the tail end of this with the Social Security adjustment coming next year because of inflation. All that's next on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner. My man Roy popped in to say hello on Facebook. Roy and I were financial advisors together for early part of my career. Hello, Roy.
Is Roy suggesting the annuity to our last?
I don't know. He might. That's the thing. I think you and I both know, Dames, a lot of financial advisors tune in, and we appreciate their support. And by the way, your advisors or otherwise, people are free to disagree with us and give us their opinion. We're not going to, yell at them or anything like that. Dame, how's the three coworkers at the outset of today's show all decided to slack me at the same time?
Well, they're not used to us doing the show at this time either, so they figure you're free to chat.
Dame, I'm very excited. This is my last official work duty before my first vacation in a very long time.
Once again, it's just me and the listeners standing between you and freedom.
I couldn't decide, and you and I didn't even talk about this, whether you should just do a show without me and host it with someone else next week, or just go best of next week.
We'll talk after the show.
Oh, man. All right. Let's do that inflation Social Security story. It's right here. All right. Are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner Show. Dame, in the last segment, we were answering an email from William, who emailed askpete@petetheplanner.com. And William has some protection with the rigors of inflation beating him over the head from a Social Security perspective, because every year there's a COLA, a cost of living adjustment on Social Security retirement benefits. And just this week, we've gotten an estimate of what the adjustment's going to be in 2022. And Dame, that's quite the raise. Did you see it?
I did, but I can't recall exactly what it is. It's like 20%, right?
I wish. 6.1%. 6%. This, of course, is coming from the nonpartisan advocacy group, the Senior Citizens League.
I think I've got some of the rookie cards stashed somewhere away.
It's also a bump from last month's estimate. I think I touched on this on the show last month, where they thought it would be 5.3%. But now, since the new estimate of the Consumer Price Index from June increasing 5.4%, they're thinking 6.1%. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. That's a huge increase.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for years and years and years, typically you only hear about the other side of that equation, how Social Security really doesn't increase and it's barely a meaningful adjustment. This year has the potential to be a gigantic increase, something very meaningful and very noticeable. So good on those of you that are collecting Social Security.
You know what I can't figure out yet, because I'm not an economist, and anyone who's listening to this show who is an economist will just laugh at me and judge me. Dame, typically, if we're dealing with an inflationary environment, don't we typically see higher interest rates in an inflationary environment? Therefore, you're also going to see like a CD at a bank paying 8% be to keep pace with all this stuff. Am I stating that wrong? Am I just showing how little I know about economics?
No, it's not
Probably.
uncommon. If we think about the last time we had a very high inflationary period in the U.S., which would have been late 70s, early 80s, mortgage rates were I think in double digits in some instances. Interest rates were incredibly high. People were talking about CDs that they had that were paying potential double digits if they were long enough. Just a different time period. So typically with inflation, higher inflation period, yes, we do see higher interest rates that go along with that. We haven't got there yet because in general, things are still really, really low, and we have had a very short-term rise in inflation. Who knows if it'll stay there or not, but the Fed has decided to keep things under control on the interest rate side, and we'll see if that changes in the near future, but it's not going to get ramped up really quick, and it's a long way to go until we get to even the interest rates that we had 15 years ago.
There was concern this week that inflation is going to become increasingly problematic for people on the very low end of the wage scale, to the point where the inflation we're seeing in the housing market, the price increases we're seeing in the housing market, are completely pricing minimum wage and living wage workers out of the ability to afford housing, which that's pretty darn extreme, Dame. The idea that I mean, there's long been the argument that minimum wage was so low because you can't afford a lot of different things. Now we're saying the most elementary expense, housing, is unattainable based on the current level of inflation. That's a little terrifying. I have to admit, I read that headline on the way home yesterday in traffic. I was parked more or less, and I saw it on my phone. I was like, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, some of the issues that I hope don't persist are going to be pretty serious, and this is one of them. If you look around enough websites and check and see what housing is in certain areas of the country, you have the typical offenders. San Francisco and coastal cities have always been expensive, but now places like Boulder, Colorado, where a 1,000 square foot, essentially a tear down house, is going to be $750,000 just because it's in the right zip code in a big city that's not too far away from me. Someone took an abandoned building in on the edge of outside of the city proper, rehabbed it, and there are 3 units there now for $1.2 million a piece, and that is greatly out of the price range of the surrounding neighborhoods, and it just is a problem that's going to have to be reckoned with. Gentrification of certain areas is going to cause really big problems for a big number of people if we're not careful.
The effects of how this recession and the recovery is going on even stretch to all corners of our country. Even look at retail rents in New York City and how much they've fallen, and how restaurants are starting up left and right in New York because rents are so low. In fact, this article in front of me right now suggests La Casa del Mofongo,
Oh,
which is, I believe I think it's like a polenta style thing made out of yucca root. I might be making that up. Mofongo, something like
Mufango?
that.
I
Yeah,
thought that was was that the villain in The Lion King?
could have been. That's Mufasa.
Oh.
A Latin restaurant and nightclub signed a 10-year deal on a 15,000 square foot space to close to Herald Square in New York City because rates are falling, or I should say, square foot price per square foot is falling so fast in New York City. It's pretty wild. Like I sometimes wish we weren't in this moment right now, so I could just watch it from above, and it seemed like high school econ all over again. But I feel like everything's heading in weird different directions, including mortgage rates fell even lower this week, and so refinances are up again.
I think I feel a little bit different about commercial rent rates versus residential rent rates. I mean, if we can spur some development and entrepreneurship with good commercial rent rates to potentially reinfuse areas of cities that have been overlooked or neglected for a long period of time, to potentially bring more people to those areas, I think I'm in favor of that side of it. It's the residential, rates that are really most concerning.
So, do you have any idea what average asking retail rents are in New York City right now? How much per square foot do you think retail costs. And it's down 10.7% from last year at this time, and it's fallen 15 quarters in a row. But guess what the average dollar per square foot is in retail rent in New York City?
Let's see, 200. $1,000 a square foot.
It was at one time, right? I mean, you're exactly right. But it's $615 a square foot right now, which, given that it's fallen 15 quarters in a row, that's how we arrive at that number. And again, as we've talked on this show for well over a year, if not for 12 years, the stock market and the economy are not the same thing. Well, as the stock market continues to give us some very nice returns, some pretty interesting signals of what could be, you still end up with economic stories like this, which are jarring and just make you think, like, at what point do the market and the economy cross back over and meet back up, I guess I should say, like they did in March of 2020, where both were just getting beaten pretty badly.
And that's why, if you and I knew that answer, we'd be doing this show from the Caribbean with great audio.
Maybe emailer William knows something, and that's why it went's completely out of the market. I mean, look, going back to that last segment for a second, and even I guess it crosses over to this segment, isn't it nice to eliminate different areas of worry in your life? And this idea that if an area of worry is that your money's constantly fluctuating, you can permanently put an end to that. I mean, that is both true, and the fact that you're losing buying power because of intense inflation makes it not true. But I guess I'm just jealous of William.
Yeah, and you know what? He should be celebrating right now. He's earned that right, and he shouldn't have any stress over this decision. So I hope he comes to peace with it.
What are the chances that 78-year-old William listens to the radio show and he's just not like a reader of the column?
Maybe he just listens while he mows the yard.
Yes. All right, Dame, let's do this. Let's take a break. Coming up after the break, I got a great question from a friend of mine about how do you get your teen set up to invest and save money. We're going to talk about that next, and a banking story, of course. I'm Pete the Planner, and this is the show. All right, Dame. So for those in the saga of my kids' banking issues, my prediction last week of what would happen when I took Ted into the bank because his account went dormant and they were charging him monthly fees because of it, basically exactly what I said would happen happened. Mm-hmm. It was not the best way to end the week. It was really frustrating.
No, but I'm glad Ted got a chance to experience what living life with a celebrity dad is like.
Oh, that hurts. That was below the belt. And you said it because you knew it would make me mad. That's the best part.
Yeah.
I hate you in a good way. Thomas, if you're listening, I do not hate your father. I love him very much. I mean, appropriately.
Right.
That'd be a big explanation too. All right. So Dame, let's hit this. This is talking to kids about money, teens. What do you do? This, that, and the other in 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner show. Dame got an email from a friend named Eric. I'm not going to give you his last name. I'm not trying to share my friends with you. And he had a question. He has a teen son, and he had a question about, like, how can he get the kid investing and all these sorts of other things. So let's hit it. Hey, Pete. My almost 16-year-old has saved about $1,400 in allowances, birthday stuff, doing extra work around the house, etc. I got him a local checking account balance of about $445 last year with a debit card so he could do some spending on his own. And now the $1,400 is just chilling in the savings account. As you know, the interest from the savings account is trivial these days. We are trying to demonstrate that poking some money away to grow is what responsible people do. So is there a better way to make that $1,400 work for him? Eric, now, Dame, this is a more complicated question than one might think, because there are 3 elements at play here. The first 1.5 are going pretty well. Give a kid an account to spend out of and how they see how commerce flows. Ideally, income goes into that account and fills it and it comes back out. So the $445 check, the need to have a checking account and debit card and teach how digital currency works, check. It works. Thank you. The second aspect of this is savings, which I also think is a really incredibly valuable lesson to store money away for later, for safekeeping. However, the third point really gets lost in this because you can't grow money in a savings account. The need and desire to have money grow is important. You can't find it here, which is why we need to introduce a whole other concept to Eric. Your thoughts?
I agree. While you were talking, I did have a question that I want to run past you, and I think it might be an interesting concept to introduce to Eric Jr. or whoever it may be.
Sure.
How early is too early to introduce the concept of an emergency fund to someone?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's interesting. I've never thought of it that way. I guess, I mean, this is as good a time as any at 16 or even 12 as I think about my daughter, trying to teach her about checking and savings. I think it's hard to get your head around a financial emergency and like what the volume of that is or the magnitude of that at that age. But to be fair, you and I both know a lot of adults that can't get their head around that either. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know how you think about that.
I think maybe if you expand on that idea, maybe this is the point where you talk about the buckets for them at this point. You have a piece of money that is set aside for emergencies, even though mom and dad are going to cover any emergencies that arise in your life at this point. But still, the concept is good to understand. And then you have that midterm bucket where you can expose that money to a little bit of risk and invest and do whatever you want to figure out. Because honestly, if you're going to make some mistakes, make them now to figure out what you are comfortable with and aren't comfortable with. And then you've got that maybe that long-term bucket that you're not really filling up just quite yet because, well, frankly, it's not quite time necessarily. Unless you've got a job as a teen and you want to contribute to a Roth IRA or something of that nature, then by all means, absolutely go for it. But at this point, maybe the bucket approach is not a bad idea to start introducing your children to.
That was my answer too, right? It was, go figure. Keep the 445 in the checking. That's bucket one. Bucket two, we're going to call the savings account at $1,000 and just cap it 1,000, which leaves us $400 at the top end, or any other deposits, future deposits this person wants to make to go into the investing bucket. And I think if you're going to teach a teen how to invest, there's a good ways to do it, and then there's very common horrible ways to do it. And so what I recommended is they go with a very large traditional trading company, investment company like Fidelity or Ameritrade or something like that. Get up a sort of a teen account set up. Fidelity has a new teen brokerage account. I think we talked about it a few months ago on the show. And here's what I would recommend. I would put half of whatever is going to be invested in a boring index fund, and I would put half in a consumer-based stock that interests the kid. And then I would just watch things happen. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting approach to make sure that the individual, the child, gets exposure to two of the more common ways of investing. You've got the one that takes in everything into aggregate, and then you also have the individual equity as well that they care about, they're passionate about, but then they can learn about following headlines and looking at prices and all that good stuff. If they're a real nerd, they can go look at tax disclosures and try and figure out what all that means. But I have no problems letting someone who's just getting started get their feet wet a little bit. And honestly, here, I thought you were going to say, just go put it all into cryptocurrency and forget about it.
No, that's what you would say. You would open a Robinhood account and then buy cryptocurrency. But I in not so many words, I did try to dissuade my friend Eric from having his son open a Robinhood account because gamifying this process is not what you want to teach at this point in time. You just want the natural ebbs and flows of the market, the numbers themselves to do the dancing, and not the graphics and confetti and everything else.
Yeah, I think the temptation when you're young is going to be showing your friends what you got going on. And, hey, I've got a Robinhood account and here's what it's doing. Look, show them your phone and what's going on. No, honestly, it's okay if it's boring. Just get them used to putting money away, looking for the results, evaluating the investments that they've got, and thinking long-term with it. So Robinhood's probably not the right option at this point, and I do like the idea of going with an established firm that can cater to their needs.
It's now time for the segment. take a load of this guy, or take a look at this guy, or get a load of this guy. Dame, here's this guy. Dame, when I was in 6th grade, I used to look up my stock prices in the business section of the newspaper 4 days a week.
4 days a week?
Yeah, for some reason, it wasn't 5 days a week. Like they would print Mondays prices on Tuesdays on Wednesdays on Thursdays on Fridays. And then for some reason, they wouldn't necessarily print Fridays on Saturdays. But sometimes on Sundays, they'd have a recap of the week, which made no sense because you've missed all the price movement. But yeah, that's how I would check my account when I was trading tobacco stocks back in my teens. Is I would wait for the paper to show up, and I'd look for the Philip Morris ticker symbol.
Just walk around and high five the kids that were smoking outside of school.
Yes, I was like, there was a whole campaign in the middle school of like, don't use tobacco, kick its butt, but it was like cigarette butts. And I was like, we got to look at the other side of this,
And what's about this personal freedom stuff? I mean, you can't tell me what to do. Let me live my own life, man.
At least let him chew.
Yeah.
No. But I guess the same thing can be said about the newspaper business in general today, which, boy, I'm treading pretty dangerously given I write for newspapers. But it's like you're reading what happened previously, not even close to in the moment. And whether that matters or doesn't matter, it does matter when you talk about financial markets, I guess.
It depends on what your goal is. Is it long-term stuff? Who cares? Why are you checking it every day if it's long-term anyway?
Because I was 16. What else was I going to do? Watch Thundercats reruns?
Yeah, because you were that guy.
I was that guy. All right, Dame. So that's our recommendation. Keep money in a debit card account for a teen to spend through. Have a set level of savings, 500, 1,000, 1,500, depending on what you have, and just have it sit there and be boring and have their back and be this junior emergency fund that I'm now going to have to get my head around, Dame, and come up with something innovative there, or maybe just have you do it. And then the third bucket, of course, is to show them how price fluctuations can be exciting and terrifying, and start to develop that risk tolerance. I think properly developing your teen's risk tolerance is super important, and dumping them into crypto or GameStop or AMC ain't the way to do it. That's not the way to develop someone's investment chops. Get them in an index fund, and then just a consumer-based stock. I mean, although you could argue, Dame, that GameStop would be appealing to a 16-year-old kid, have it be something like Krispy Kreme donuts or Starbucks, whatever kids are into.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes total sense, and will set them up for a successful long-term investing career.
Dame, coming up after the break, the biggest waste of money of the week in the news. I found last week's biggest waste of money of the week while I was doom scrolling in bed. And so I will share with you next, right here on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm it, fella. All right. What was your first individual stock you owned, Dame?
Facebook.
Oh yeah, I think we've talked about this because you didn't buy individual stocks until
like 15 years ago, 12, 15 years ago maybe. And it hit the target that I was going for and sold out, and it promptly continued to double or triple beyond that, and here we are.
My first three were Philip Morris, Fifth Third Bank, and then Sirius Satellite Radio.
Ooh.
Sirius Satellite Radio, I think I went from like 20 cents to $4 a share, and I had thousands of shares.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you first got into investing and you would be like, I'm going to take a look at penny stocks? Do you remember that whole
Totally.
I don't know. Everyone's, because it sounds cheap. And so you're like, well, I mean, it's just pennies.
Yeah.
So let's just do the penny stocks.
Yeah, there was a large automotive-related company in my hometown that had some big financial trouble a number of years ago, and their stock went to less than $1 a share. And of course, my dad, being the wonderful dad he was, told all his friends that I had bought tens of thousands of shares of it, and because then it promptly went right back up to $10 or $12 a share, and so all his friends were looking at me like I was now going to be the guy that was buying their drinks for the rest of their life. But no, I did not, unfortunately.
What was the other? The pink sheets.
Pink sheets.
Check out the pink sheets.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's do the final segment. You ready with news, current events?
I got it ready to go.
Hopefully I don't steal one of your current events, because one of them is the biggest waste of money.
I bet it is. That was down the list, but I think I know exactly where you're going.
And 3, 2, 1. This week's biggest waste of money of the week right here on the Pete the Planner Show is, Dame, I don't know if you know about the billionaires going to space. You've only brought it up the last 2 weeks. You know about it, right?
I've heard something.
And if you're keeping score at home, you wanted to have me bet on whether they'd make it back. Well, Richard Branson has made it back.
1 for 1.
1 for 1. And Jeff Bezos, I never know how to.
I don't either.
Does it? I mean, if we mispronounce his name, is he gonna get mad?
He don't care.
So he's going up with Blue Origin, which is the name of his company. Who cares? But there was an auction. Someone bid $28 million to ride along with Jeff Bezos on Blue Origin and his brother Mark and aerospace pioneer Wally Funk. I just wanted to say Wally Funk. And the person that bid $28 million isn't going on the mission.
Yeah. I mean, you never know when the cable guy is going to show up. They give you that range, and maybe it just crossed over and he can't make it now.
Yeah, so that's the weird thing about this is that the guy's not going on because he can't make the schedule work. He might go on a future mission. Now, the money was donated to charity. $28 million was donated actually to a foundation that Bezos controls. So now the son of a CEO of a Dutch private equity firm, Somerset Capital Partners, this 18-year-old kid, Oliver Damien, is going in his place. And so, boy, money talks and spaceships fly, right?
Exactly. I think that's how I remember that saying going all the time.
Do you have any interest whatsoever in going to outer space and how these people are going to outer space? Like they're going up and they're up there for a couple minutes and they come. Does that interest you on any human level? Forget the money. Like I buy you a ticket. Are you going?
Oh yeah, if you buy me the ticket, absolutely. But to go up there and spend a couple minutes floating around and coming back down, I'd at least want to circle the earth a couple times probably, but to make it worth my time.
Yeah, I don't have much interest in this whole thing. Like I know if I went to try to climb Mount Everest, I would most likely die. But I would have, and especially how bad I am at getting altitude sickness. But I would much rather go try to do something where I've done something as opposed to I just sit and I fly up into space. I don't know.
I mean, did we talk about like me wanting to go to space camp when I was a kid?
Oh yeah, we've talked about this.
Yeah. So I mean, this is very appealing to me, but the cost for 2 minutes of floating around, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a good use of anybody's money yet.
Note to self: return gift card. Dame, what's in the news this week?
It's comfort food in a cone.
Mm-hmm.
A limited edition macaroni and cheese flavored ice cream will hit freezers nationwide this week. Brooklyn-based ice cream maker Van Leeuwen and Kraft Heinz announced Tuesday of this week. The cheesy frozen treat, and that makes me want to retch just saying it, went on sale for $12 a pint on Wednesday to mark National Macaroni and Cheese Day. It'll be available for purchase at Van Leeuwen stores across the country as well as online while supplies last. The companies describe the ice cream as a, quote, cool, creamy scoop of ice cream that brings that comforting, nostalgic feeling from a warm bowl of Kraft macaroni and cheese.
I will tell you, this sounds good to me.
What?
All right, so Mrs. Planner ran the New York City Marathon several years ago, and there was a restaurant in New York called WD-50. And the chef's name was Wiley Dufresne, and it was like one of these gastro-culinary things, molecular gastronomy, where they make food taste like other food, but it's in a different form. And one of the dishes we had was lox and bagel, but it was ice cream. And so like the bagel was formed, ice cream was formed into a bagel formation, which was actually salmon-flavored ice cream. And then they had salmon-looking ice cream on top, which was actually cream cheese and everything seasoning. So it just blew your mind, and you're eating it, and you think one thing's going to taste like one thing and another's another thing, but it all tastes like a beautiful, wonderful bagel, lox and bagel, except the fact that it's ice cream. And it was one of the most mind-blowing culinary experiences I've ever had. and I'm guessing the mac and cheese would not deliver on that.
No, there's just no way that this is. No. Pete, you like to cook. I know you like to cook.
Oh, I love to cook.
You ever use McCormick spices and rubs?
I think at some point in time in my life, I've rubbed down with the McCormick's.
Well, they're looking for some help. Specifically, they need a director of taco relations.
Pardon me now?
A director of taco relations. As the director of taco relations, you'll be McCormick's resident consulting taco expert. You'll be their official eyes and ears for all things tacos. You'll have the opportunity to work with McCormick Kitchens to develop and innovate a delicious taco recipe and travel across the country in search of the latest taco trends, dialogue with other like-minded taco connoisseurs across social media, and be in on the latest street taco seasoning mixes developed by the McCormick Innovation Lab. You must be able to work remotely for up to 20 hours a week from September to December of 2021. Pete, how much do you think they will compensate you for 4 months of work?
I'm thinking a lifetime supply of spices is my guess, honestly.
Payment is $25,000 per month, not to exceed $100,000.
To be a taco ambassador of some sort?
Director of Taco Relations. This is a serious gig, Pete. If you are interested in applying, you have to submit by July 20th, 2021, 11:59 p.m. Eastern.
That's a pretty good gig. Do you remember when you're a kid and you're trying to figure out like what are the best and worst jobs, and you get like armpit sniffer, and then you're like, no, but I could be an ice cream taster. Do you remember the whole thing? I think
Totally.
my kids are into that right now.
Yeah. Do you remember what you would have said is your best job when you were a kid?
Probably the same thing as what Ted says: a basketball player or a football player.
For a long time, I said told everybody my dream job was a bullpen catcher for the Chicago Cubs.
That's amazing. I mean, you'd have terrible knees and a swollen hand, but
If you catch the ball in the pocket of the glove, Pete, you don't get a swollen hand.
Look, I'm not into hockey. Dane, what else is in the news?
States could do a far better job teaching financial literacy in their schools, a new report suggests. To that point, 66% of states earn grades of C or worse for such instruction, according to the nation's report card on financial literacy, a study released by the American Public Education Foundation. Just 17 states were given grades of A or B. The report relied on factors like graduation requirements, standards, and curriculums to create its scores. Just 5 states, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, Utah, and Virginia, received an A grade for mandating personal financial education from kindergarten through 12th grade and requiring a standalone personal finance course for high school graduation. Another 12 states received a B, 19 states earned a C, and 12 were given a D. Meanwhile, 4 spots, Alaska, D.C., Puerto Rico, South Dakota, they got an F. Indiana?
Yeah, what'd they get?
You want to guess?
C.
We got a B, Pete. Indiana coming through with a solid B.
This is one of, if I were in a gripey mood, which I'm not sure I am right now. I'm in a pretty decent mood because I'm about to go on vacation. This is a very frustrating thing for me, not the lack of education, but the reality as to what the education would need to be to work and why it doesn't work. The fact of the matter is people's financial literacy is in the tank because what would prevent it from being in the tank is to arm them against corporate greed, to show you how to not be taken advantage of by banks and real estate companies and marketing brands. Like, that's what it's about. But that's why you'll never have the financial literacy you need, because the places that fund this in an altruistic way, because it's a community service project, would actually be arming you against themselves. And that's why it'll never work.
Yeah, financial literacy, I don't think probably goes quite far enough in determining or describing behavioral issues as well.
Boy, I got a little more heated there than I'd like.
Well, happy vacation.
I almost busted a stitch on my vest. All right. Well, Dame, so we'll figure out if there's a show next week or not. I don't want to be involved because I won't be here. But listen, everyone else, I hope the volume worked this week on the show. Dame's volume not too low, mine not too high, and everything in between. I'm sending you good vibes because good vibes are all that's in the budget. I'm Pete the Planner, and this is the show. Yeah, I'm not kidding. During the show, like everyone I knew called, emailed, or texted me or slacked me. but they're not all related. So it's not like the world just crashed and they want to know if I'm okay. It's just like, I don't know why I don't just turn off all notifications, because it was a horrendous, it's a train wreck here.
That would have been a good idea.
All right. So Dame, are you doing a show next week, or are we talking about that off the air?
We're going to talk about that off the air.
Okay. Hey everybody. I hope you have a good week, whether it's with Dame or with no one. And of course, as always, stay getting money.